Right, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is by far the highest Hunter DPS build in the game right now, and it doesn't rely on any bugs or glitches. It's purely legit, and the best part, it's not even prismatic, because what you're looking at right now is a pure void hunter setup. No funny business, just the classic subclass shining like it never has before. And I'll let the results speak for themselves. What you're seeing here is a screenshot of my damage from a run of the final boss of Cutthroat Epic Desert Perpetual, and pushing 300k at this level is beyond impressive if I do say so myself. And today I'm going to teach you exactly how to do this. Despite today's build definitely being more DPS focused, I'm also going to show you how to set up your neutral game or running loadout so that you also have a strong kit outside of damage. And you'll be seeing that in the gameplay sprinkled throughout the video. So without further ado, let's begin. And if you enjoy today's build, then your like and subscription would be very much appreciated. And I'm also trying something new here where I've hidden an emblem code somewhere throughout this video for you to find. So before we get into the details of this build, the first thing I want to show you is how the rotation itself works. So I'm just going to apply Witherhoard, then I'm going to go into Tether, then I'm just going to spam between my crossbow and my energy weapons. We're just going to go back and forth constantly here, and it should reload every time, and it should allow me to get to the very end of my reserves. There we go. And then the rotation is complete. So if you were paying attention to the clip, you would have noticed that my DPS went pretty bloody high, and it takes less than 16 seconds to get our entire crossbow reserves off, and they are disappearing now, but you can go and grab your bolts back again, provided that the boss allows you to do that. And the DPS of this is upwards of 7,000 or 8,000, which is absolutely insane. So for a short phase, it's excellent, but because we are using the crossbow as our main damage source, you're going to have infinite ammo if you're able to get your bolts back off the target. So let's begin by breaking it down, starting with the crossbow. Now the focus is going to be the A Good Shout crossbow, which you can get from Pinnacle Ops or occasionally from the Grandmaster Vanguard alerts, because then it comes with the accelerated assault origin trait. Now my role doesn't have that, and I'll explain why you don't necessarily need it. And as you saw just there, we were doing really good damage without the origin trait. That's just like a bonus on top, but we're going to be breaking down what you want on this exotic. So the first thing you want is Envious Arsenal. Now this is the only crossbow in the game that has this perk on, and it is basically really good for crossbows because, as you can see, normally if you're just firing a crossbow, it is just very slow. It's very unwieldy. The reload animation is insanely long, and currently we don't have any crossbows that have multiple arrows in the magazine. It is just one, and I feel like it's going to stay that way. So if we use Envious Arsenal, all I need to do is just shoot one bolt, then go between my two weapons, and it's reloaded already. And that is a lot faster than the standard reload animation of a crossbow. Like I said, unfortunately, this is the only crossbow that has it right now, but it is relatively easy to farm. So Envious Arsenal, a must-have, improves the DPS massively. After that, we have the High Ground damage perk. Now, the damage perks on this crossbow are actually just really bad. In fact, I believe it is just box breathing and High Ground. Box breathing is very bad, and High Ground is very situational. However, it is a pretty decent damage buff. I believe it's 25%, and you can proc it on more bosses than you think you might be able to. In fact, you can proc it on Korgos in the Desert Perpetual raids. For some reason, I don't know, it's just probably to do with how his model is coded, but this is the damage perk that we are going to be using on this weapon. Again, you don't necessarily need it depending on the boss you're fighting. The boss might be higher than you or whatever, so then the perk won't trigger. But if Bungie release a crossbow in the future that has a better damage perk and Envious Arsenal, such as Aggregate Charge or Elemental Honing, then you can forget about A Good Shout. This is just the best one that we have right now. Of course, you would also want Accelerated Assault, so I have another version here in my inventory which has Accelerated Assault. However, this version does not have High Ground on it, so I was a bit out of luck here, but Accelerated Assault is going to increase the damage of your bolts by 6% once you trigger the perk, so just a little bit more damage if you manage to get one. If you get lucky, then definitely keep it. And finishing up with the perks that you want on your bolt and your rail, it is actually very important that you get heavy bolts on your crossbow because the damage is the highest with heavy bolts. So let me show you what that looks like. So with heavy bolts, we are dealing 2,205 to the head. And the other option that is somewhat okay is going to be charged bolts, because this deals damage over time. So taking a look here, we deal 2,000 impact damage, and this is going to last for around 5 to 10 seconds or so. It's just going to keep ticking the damage in the background, and then it's going to stop, let's see here, at around 2,479, which is fine, but it's over a longer period of time. So if you want my advice, go for heavy bolts because it is the highest damage and it deals it just in an instant, which is quite nice. Also, when building out your crossbows, you want to try and max out your handling for this particular rotation because it is going to be good for just swapping between your energy weapons, but we'll get into that. Also, having reload speed works for neutral game, ultralight light rail or quick load rail is fine as well. But the main perks you want are heavy bolts, envious arsenal, high ground, and optionally accelerated assault if you get lucky. So the next part of the rotation that is very important is going to be Witherhoard, and the reason we are taking it is because it's going to allow us to proc envious arsenal on the crossbow even faster by preventing us from needing to swap to a third weapon, which is going to increase the DPS by quite a lot. What that looks like in game, all I need to do is apply Witherhoard, shoot this, and then I swap to my secondary and back to the crossbow, and it is already reloaded because Witherhoard is ticking in the background. And if you're very quick with it, as you saw at the beginning of the video, you can actually get every single one of your bolts, so all 10 of them, off within the duration of a single Witherhoard. I'll just show you what that looks like here. I'm just going to do one Witherhoard. We go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then the Witherhoard just ran out, so it lasts long enough for you to be able to get your entire reserves off, which is really, really nice. It is a really cool synergy and is also what lends this rotation to be such high DPS in the first place. After that, all you need to do is pair a high handling secondary weapon. All I have here is a chronophage, and this has 68 handling, which is good enough. You also want to be running triple void dexterity on this damage loadout. Could swap one of the dexterities out, but I'm just running triple to absolutely max out my handling for my void weapons, and it just helps that chronophage and a good shout are both void, and that just means that you're going to be able to swap between your weapons very quickly. The only problem with this rotation is that only one person on the team can run Witherhoard at a time, as in sticking to a target. Only one person is allowed to. Don't worry though, you do have alternative options other than Witherhoard, the first of them being an area denial frame grenade launcher. Again, only one person on the team can use an area denial, but it is separate to Witherhoard, so if you just take a look in game, I just need to spray Carl a bit here, and the rotation still works. You probably won't be able to get all 10 off. In fact, there I got around 4. Still ticking, you can probably get 4 or 5 before you need to reapply your area denial. Something like a lost signal with autoloading is good for that. The poison from Osteostriga is also going to work because that ticks in the background and it is going to allow me to continuously just swap like we normally would, and I believe it lasts around 10 seconds. Furthermore, this is a bit of a weird one, but you could also use Alethanim because this does damage over time when you attach it to a target. So all I need to do is something like this, attach to Carl, and I can just do back and forth between my crossbow for around, I want to say like 4 shots. See there, I need to finish up. So around 4 shots before you need to go again with Alethanim, but it's very clunky and I wouldn't recommend it. So if nobody else on your fire team is using it, I would recommend either going with Witherhoard, a area denial, or Osteostriga. Alethanim is a last resort, but it does work, so fun fact. The next part of what makes this rotation so strong is our super selection, and we are going for the Mobius Quiver Shadow Shot variant. The 35% weaken from Deadfall, which it got in Renegades, is pretty nice. However, Mobius Quiver is far better for this rotation because of the changes that were made to it and how it affects bows, including crossbows. So essentially, what this super does now, you don't even have to hit a target with it. All I need to do is fire off the first volley, and that's going to give me the Mobius Quiver meter on the left of my screen. And what that's going to allow us to do is when you fill it up by dealing damage, it is going to increase the damage of our crossbow bolts up to a maximum of 227%. And if we then cast the super again at the end, it's going to do increased damage because that bar also increases the damage of the super itself. You essentially want to use one volley to get that meter, deal as much crossbow damage as you can, like you saw at the beginning, and then fire off the last volley when the super is about to end to maximize the amount of time you can get to deal damage with your bows, and then get that little bit of extra damage at the end with the final fully charged volley. Also, by default, the Mobius Quiver super, as in the actual ticking down portion of it, this lasts for 16 seconds, which isn't a huge amount of time. You can improve that with an alternate exotic choice to what we are using currently, but 16 seconds is pretty good. You can actually get around 14 or 15 bolts off in that time if you are really quick and really sort of edge the last part of the super to try and get that final volley off as late as possible. So 16 seconds is pretty good. Speaking of exotics, the one that we are using with this build is going to be Fortune's Favor. This is the new one that came out with Renegades, and I'll save you the long description. Basically, this exotic is going to buff the damage of all of our weapons by 15% whenever we have a void overshield, and it regenerates your overshield constantly. As you've probably been able to tell here throughout the demo, I've had 10 seconds of void overshield constantly without it ever dropping off. So when I have the overshield, my weapons are going to be doing 15% more damage, including the crossbow. It's very standard. It is just pretty solid exotic overall. You could alternatively use Orpheus Rig, because what this is going to do is increase the duration of your Mobius tether to 20 seconds up from 14, which is a pretty decent increase, allowing you to get more arrows off in the time of the super. In fact, you can probably get maybe twice your reserves, around 20 or so. But the problem with Orpheus Rig is that it doesn't have any neutral game help to your build at all. Having a void overshield during neutral game with Fortune's Favor Favor is really nice. It lets you survive longer. It triggers a bunch of artifact perks this season, like Singularity Blade, for example, but Orpheus Rig doesn't offer you any of this. It does get your damage higher, but in my opinion, if you can keep up the Void Overshield during damage, I think Fortune's Favor is better. Plus, in a world where not swap exists in things like contest raids and dungeons, you're going to want to stick to one exotic anyway, so I think Fortune's Favor is the play here. Furthermore, Fortune's Favor also gives you increased handling for your weapons, letting your weapon swaps just be better throughout the whole rotation, which is pretty good. So lastly, before we talk about any neutral game components or anything like that, I just want to put it all together once again and show you the rotation in full now that I've explained how most of it works to you. I just need to go Witherhoard into this, into arrows, over and over, just constantly swapping. There we go, that's more like it. See if I can get all 10. Go 8, 9. Okay, doesn't always go to plan. But that is the general idea. You get better at it the more that you practice the rotation. So, stats-wise, what are we going for here? As you can see, I've got 200 weapons. Now, the reason I've got for 200 weapons is because that is the only stat that matters for this build, and it's also really good for neutral game. You might be thinking, why not more super stat? Because that is going to increase the damage of my Mobius Quiver, which, yes, would be nice. However, the amount of that damage that is from the super is basically nothing. So why not go all in on the weapons, which are doing the majority of the heavy lifting for this? That's going to be the crossbow, my Witherhoard. At 200 weapons, we're going to be doing 15% more damage with Witherhoard, and then 10% more with a good shout to bosses. So 200 weapons is going to be the play. After that, I've also gone for 80 class, 80 super, 70 grenade, and then 42 melee, which I make up with a melee font on the neutral game build, but I'll talk about that more later. Speaking of neutral game, 200 weapons is also really good because every brick that you create is going to be enhanced, which is going to give us more ammo for our special weapons. And surprise, surprise, this is going to be a double special setup. We're actually going to be using Choir and Mint in our neutral game, but like I said, I'll talk about that more in just a moment. But these are the stats: 200 weapons above all else, then decent cooldown stats. I could have a bit more super here if I was really being picky. 80 is fine. You can always make it up with something like a super font on the helmet, but 80 has actually been all right with the testing that I've done recently. So in terms of the pieces that allowed me to get this distribution, my helmet is Gunner with a tertiary stat in class and tuning in weapons. My gauntlets are Gunner with a tertiary stat in super and a tuning in melee. My chest piece is Specialist with a tertiary stat in super and weapons tuning. My Fortune's Favor is Gunner with a tertiary stat in melee. And then my class item is Specialist, again with a tertiary stat in super and a melee tuning. Set bonuses wise, I also have the 2-piece Ferropotent for the 10% DR, which is really nice, especially on a Void Hunter, which doesn't have any intrinsic damage resistance options outside of Void Overshield, which to be honest in high level activities is pretty squishy at times, so that helps with that. Then I've also gone for the Ion Adapter set bonus, which is going to give me a 20% splash damage reduction whenever I get a kill with something like a Mint Retrograde, any micro missile weapon, for 15 seconds, which is really nice. Okay, now let's go into the subclass, and we're just going to be a little quick with this because this is the part that doesn't matter as much, but it is good to know for the neutral game portion of the build whenever you're running like pre-mechanics in a boss encounter, for example. So obviously we're going to be going with Mobius Quiver like we discussed previously. Class ability, Marksman Dodge. This dodge, oh my god, it's so good. It was pointed out to me that with a single press of a button, you know, I never really sort of subconsciously realized this. With a single press of a button, Marksman Dodge is doing so much for you. One, it is going to collect orbs near you if you're using the Powerful Attraction mod. Number two, it got changed recently where it collects all of the ammo around you as well. It's like an ammo vacuum, and that I believe has a 15-meter radius, which is pretty good. Also, it's going to make me invisible if I'm using Vanishing Step, and it's just going to break enemy aggro. So it's a very powerful ability. Always use Marksman Dodge, I believe, except if you are on something like Combination Blow. Melee ability, we are locked to Snare Bomb. Grenade, I quite like the Vortex Grenade here because it is just very solid for pulling enemies in, crowd control and stuff like that. Then for the Aspect combo, I've gone for the classic Stylish Executioner and Vanishing Step combo from the Witch Queen days. Honestly, I have tried on the Prowl. I am not a Hunter main, but it just doesn't really do it for me. The things that I like the most about the combo of Stylish and Vanishing Step is that they're just so consistent. Like, I can go invisible on demand with Vanishing Step if I'm in a tricky situation, and then Stylish Executioner is going to be proccing quite a lot because I have a lot of weaken things going off. One of our fragments is going to allow the grenade to weaken as well. Very consistent. If you wanted, you could swap Stylish for On the Prowl, but again, you know, I can get invisible from anywhere as long as I kill the weakened target. With On the Prowl, I physically have to move my character to that location, which sometimes is really awkward, and I can't do that. So that could be the difference between life and death. Stylish and Vanishing Step, you do lose a 5th fragment slot, but in my opinion, it is by far the most consistent option. Quickly for the fragments, we have Echo of Undermining. This is going to make your void grenades weaken targets, again, which is going to make stylish executioner more consistent. Echo of starvation for us to get devour. Picking up a void breach or an orb of power grants devour, which is going to be more healing and more grenade energy, which is really nice. Echo of dilation. The only reason I have this on here is because of the huge stat boost you get, which is plus 10 weapon and plus 10 super. This is a wildcard slot. If you already have better stats than me, then you can swap this for whatever you like. I'm just doing it for the stats, don't care about the effects. Then finally, Echo of vigilance. Very important for you void hunters, because if you're in a pinch and you are red health, all you need to do is get a kill on an enemy and then you get a full void overshield, which is also going to feed into Fortune's favor, mind you. You're going to come from the brink, you're going to get a lot of health back, and your weapons are going to be instantly super boosted for a little moment while you have Echo of vigilance proc. So you're going to want this. Defeating a target while your shields are depleted grants you a temporary void overshield. Very good for survivability. Another kind of random note that I wanted to talk about is that on my damage loadout, I have swapped from triple jump to strafe jump. Now, the reason I have done this is because on a particular encounter, this being the Epoptes fight, or the Hydra in the Epic Desert Perpetual, or just normal Desert Perpetual, you'll be seeing from the gameplay, what I do when I run out of my crossbow bolts is I jump to him, grab the bolts, and then jump away. And with triple jump, it is a little bit more dangerous, or it just felt like it was because you don't have as much directional control when you are using triple jump in this situation. I still die when I fall into the hole, but obviously the Hydra is floating above a hole, so having strafe jump here I think is a little bit better. So for any of you that are going into the Desert Perpetual as a hunter wanting to try this build, try strafe jump. I think you will like it. So now we're moving into the weapon selection for our neutral game setup, and we are going to be going with Mint Retrograde and Choir of One. These two weapons are really good, and especially when combined with 200 weapon stat, it doesn't feel like you are running double special at all. You literally have infinite ammo. It is going to be impossible for you to run out of ammo unless you are spam clicking your hipfire shots on Choir for some reason, which you shouldn't be. You want to be using the aim in fire as much as possible, and you just get so much ammo for these weapons, especially if you have a strand scavenger on your boots. Having 200 weapons is seriously a massive blessing for this setup, and it means you'll never run out of ammo, which is really good. Choir is insanely ammo efficient, and as you guys know, Mint Retrograde is just a beast. If you are coming into the game with Renegades and you don't have a Mint Retrograde, you have a couple options. You could get them from Hawthorne engrams, but you could also get yourself a different weapon, such as Tinashe's Mastery, for example, or if you have like an older rocket sidearm in that slot, like the Call, or like an area denial frame, Mint is the best though if you have it. Also, small note, use the destabilizing rounds refit or destabilizing rounds catalyst on your Choir, because this is going to be very good for crowd control and proccing stylish executioner very often as well. So use the destab catalyst. So overall, with these weapons and the setup that we have with the subclass, it is going to be very good for neutral game. You're going to see from the gameplay that it's just very hard for me to die, even if all I have is a void overshield or just devour on its own. I was filming this in a ultimate activity and I was just having a really easy time. It's totally nothing to be worried about, and especially in a raid where the stakes are less punishing with regards to ads, you will not be dying anytime soon with this neutral game setup. So now we're going to wrap up with the armor mods, and this is going to be specifically for the damage loadout. However, I will have dim links to both of them in the description, so don't worry about that. But starting with the helmet, I'm going to go with triple super fonts, because this is going to raise my super stat up to 130 whenever I am in damage, which is nothing crazy impressive, but it's just a little extra boost. I've also gone for triple void dexterity on the gloves to make my swaps very good. Chest piece, doesn't matter. I've also gone for charged up here, but that's just personal preference, don't need to. For the boots, I have triple void surge for maximum damage on my crossbow. Don't need kinetic surge for the Witherhoard at all. It is purely there to enable envious arsenal swaps. Then finally, for the class item, I have double time dilation and powerful attraction to make my fonts or surges last longer. Like I said, the links to both of the neutral and damage loadouts are going to be in the description. However, these are the mods here on screen that I'm using for the neutral game part. One important thing is using a melee font on the gloves, which for me is going to raise my stat from 40 to 60 for melee, which is pretty good, but it's also there so that whenever I swap to my damage loadout, I don't lose any of my armor charges because they are already ticking because of the melee font on my neutral. Also have a strand scavenger there. Don't need a void scavenger because Choir is already so ammo efficient and you only need like 4 bricks to max out your crossbow bolts anyway, so don't worry about that. Also, the artifact for this build is totally optional. You don't need it. It is not required. However, there are a couple mods that help, but I just wanted to showcase the majority of the build strength without the artifact because it doesn't need it, honestly. The only thing that the artifact perks help with is neutral game. These being Void Infestation to get a bit more weaken out of the build, also Singularity Blade here, and then Power from Pain to give another avenue of accessing Devour other than collecting an orb or a Void Breach. Not needed, but just helps with the neutral game. Still, outside of this season, once Renegades is over, assuming we get more DLCs in the future, you will not be needing any artifact-based things. It is still going to be just as powerful, of course, if Bungie don't nerf this interaction in any way. So that is going to be it for today's build, guys. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope that you can take this into your next raid or dungeon version and show off to your friends how much your DPS has improved and just absolutely mog them once the damage screen ends up coming out in the end. Here is the fashion that I used for the build. Let me know if you like it down in the comments below, if you liked it or not. I have taken inspiration from a piece from Crips once again, so big shout out to Crips. And as always, like I said, the dim links to both of these builds are going to be down in the description box below if you want to copy them hassle-free. But that is going to bring us to the end of the video, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye for now, dear viewer.